Doing a boycott was a strategic choice. I think anybody familiar with our organization knows that we are not prone to that kind of strategy, but as Karen mentioned, when a law is so extreme, it calls for extraordinary measures. And in this case, we actually engaged in a conversation with our community organizations in Arizona, because obviously we know this will impact them. This will impact people who oppose 1070. But what we found is that people said on the ground, you need to go forward. So what we are doing is pledging with other national civil rights organizations, with labor organizations, to not hold any conventions, major events, or meetings in Arizona that would require us to travel from out of state. In addition, we're also asking all our networks to do the same. And for us, certainly that involves talking to our corporate partners, much in the same way as we did with the Lou Dobbs campaign, where we started educating people about the pernicious effects of that kind of rhetoric, much as is the case in Arizona, and for people of good conscience to make a choice. And I think what you saw there was that advertisers started looking more closely at how their ad allocations were being used at CNN. And I think people are going to start looking here more closely. We need to educate folks so that there is a lot of misconception. Some people are hearing this line of, well, it's just a restatement of federal law. Based on what we've discussed here, I think nothing can be further from the truth. So the first line of action is to make sure people understand what's in the law. And our experience has been that once we're able to have that conversation, people are outraged about what it really is about.
Gibby Martinez, isn't there also a risk that Arizona, as we've already seen in the person of the governor, in the person of prominent legislators, dig their heels in? And it becomes harder to address this law just because you've backed them up against the wall and they're going to fight for this thing, even though it's hurting their state and their reputation.
Especially when they are also fighting for their political lives. Senator John McCain, who has been a very prominent supporter of comprehensive immigration reform, started backing away in 2007 as he prepared for his presidential campaign. Now he's facing re-election in a tough Republican primary against a former Republican congressman. And so he has actually come out and endorsed Governor Brewer, as has John Kyle, the other Republican senator, who was supposed to be leading the Republican negotiations back in 2007, the last time the Senate took this up. So yes, we've seen a very hardening of positions. But what is going to happen is, I think that, as Clarissa said, there is this constant education that's going to occur. And it may take time, but it will happen. They're going to start feeling the economic kickback and the pushback from not only Hispanics, but also people who don't want to travel to Arizona because they are not sure about what's going on there. And I think that at some point, you know, I have to say that one of the most interesting congressional hearings I've seen recently occurred this week before the House Immigration Subcommittee. And Richard Land, who is the head of the Southern Baptist Convention, who told the legislators, you know, all of my ministers and our congregations, I'll bet you that they all vote Republican, but they don't like what is happening here. And he said, it's a time for politicians to stand up and be statesmen. And he was preaching to the Republicans and Democrats who do not want to move forward with this. He was basically saying, it's your job, it's your responsibility, do something.